last week, the 800-pound gorilla in the room was the HeartBleed incident, actually a vulnerability associated with HeartBleed. And hopefully some people have gotten it down to the 400-pound gorilla. But I suspect others kind of feel like it's waiting on them, perhaps a 1,200-pound gorilla at this point. Is there such thing as a 1,200-pound gorilla? In any case, Matt, we've found a couple of new things that are probably worth discussing here. I think Jim's going to be talking about something a little bit later on. But what should we be doing about websites here?
So the big question when HeartBleed first broke was the very first thing in the announcement was you can get private keys stolen through this vulnerability, which is game over at that point for an encrypted website. And there was a lot of back and forth as it's possible, it's not possible, it's improbable, it's not probable.
I was a skeptic.
Personally, I was too. It seemed like such a rare thing. You're kind of rolling the dice each time you make the attack. But it seems like Cloudflare put together a challenge to see if this was actually possible and crowdsourced it and said, show us that it's possible.
Right.
And it turns out that it's possible after all. So if you were ever wondering if you need to change your keys and your certificates for your servers, the answer is yes.
Yes. So this is specifically for sites that either were vulnerable or perhaps they're still vulnerable. Once they get that patch, they want to expedite the patch. And then subsequent to that, make sure that they revoke the old certificate and replace it with a new one. And I think that, an important aspect of this is that, this is a precautionary measure.
Right.
What do you think, John?
I mean, the chances of this occurring is probably somewhat unlikely. But it's better to err on the side of caution, in my opinion. Get a new certificate, revoke the old certificate, and just to err on the side of caution with this one.
But to that point, there is proof of concept code now that does the brute forcing in a much more efficient manner than ever before. And I know that people are still working to improve the efficiency of the attack. So if you give someone a couple hours or a couple days, depending on the method you're using, eventually you've made enough requests that the probability of you finding the key is high enough.
Yeah, and I think that's significant. It takes a number of requests. That is, you get back whatever the thing gives you when you do this exploit, and so you have to keep guessing. And in one example, I think they said it took them about 3 million guesses to actually get the key back. But once they got the key back, they would have the key, and so that's a part of this. The probability of someone having been exploited before the vulnerability was disclosed is probably very, very low. So long as organizations have expedited the process of fixing the vulnerability, the fact that the exploit code is getting better isn't going to be of any consequence at that point. So again, it is a precautionary measure. And then beyond that, you still have to either, if you're trying to monitor traffic, still gain access to the encrypted traffic to be able to actually decrypt it using that key. And then on top of that, you'd still have to, if you wanted to masquerade as a site, you still have to draw somebody to that masqueraded site.
So talk about the cloud site attack.
Yeah, so there'd be other activities that would have to take place to make that vulnerability or that exploit really effective in doing much else.
All right. Leveraging this type, like if you were able to harvest a private key certificate and then leverage that with some of these DNS changer type things that we've talked about in previous shows, that would be a pretty powerful attack, because now you're altering the DNS response to pretend that your website is really such and such bank, and you've already got their certificate, you get an SSL encryption, it looks good. All those things, stars to align, is going to be pretty tricky. You're going to have to be a pretty savvy criminal in order to get that to happen. But it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, and it's going to be somewhat localized if it does occur anyway, which perhaps makes good news media, but probably is not that significant of a concern. Yes, there are vulnerabilities here. They could be exploited, but the probability of it being exploited in some way that's meaningful or significant, compared to a lot of these other problems that we discuss on a regular basis, very low.
One of the things to note is that most of the CAs out there, the certificate authorities, are providing replacement certificates for free in this case, because they know a lot of people want to change their old ones out. So at the Internet Storm Center, we've been tracking revoked certificates from some of the major CRLs, and we are seeing a lot of folks who have been replacing their certificates, revoking the old ones, and getting new ones. In some cases, it's difficult to tell whether the certificate has been replaced unless you've been keeping track of the serial numbers because they aren't necessarily issuing them with new start dates. They're using the old, so they're backdating the effective date on some of the newly issued certificates. But yeah, that's something that we've been tracking over at the Internet Storm Center, and it's kind of interesting watching those numbers.